J. Let me just pick it right up and get going. Once the athlete went through this 10 months of difficult training, once the athlete went through this 10 months of difficult training, comma, he was eligible to compete in the games and winning a victory wreath was now a possibility, period. This is analogous to moving into the Z radical of the plan of God, period. Remember, the Z radical is the mature believer's radical. It takes the reality of the X radical, which means eternal life and blessings in time, and now gives you the opportunity to function as a mature believer, storing up blessings in eternity. Okay, so this is analogous to moving into the Z radical of the plan of God, period. The actual events were held in the National Stadium and included many categories, period. This is analogous to the many different spiritual gifts in the plan of God. Stop. This has been 9 minutes since my last alarm went off. Sorry about that, guys. I don't know who came up with that standard, but if you ever notice that, every sleep, if you hit sleep instead of stop, every sleep goes 9 minutes later. Anyway. This is analogous to the many different spiritual gifts in the plan of God, period. These events included running, boxing. Obviously, that's why Paul picked those two in his example in that passage that I gave you above in Corinthians. We have running, boxing, wrestling. If you're from the South, wrestling. Wrestling, discus, javelin, and chariot racing. Chariot racing. The winner of each event received a wreath made of olive, comma, ivy, comma, hopefully not the poison kind, olive, ivy, pine, etc. Here's your wreath made of 2x4s. Anyway, olive, ivy, pine, etc. Depending upon the locality of the games, and the game involved, period. Winning one of these wreaths was one of the highest honors in the ancient world, comma, both in Greece and later on in the Roman Empire. This is analogous to the believer being able to have the highest and most eternal rewards no matter what his or her particular spiritual gift. So just like there are different categories in the games, there are different categories of spiritual gifts. And the idea is that you can get a wreath no matter which spiritual gift you have, just like you could get a wreath no matter which athletic competition that you were involved in. Okay, which could potentially lead to also meaning that you could get a wreath for each of your spiritual gifts if you have multiple spiritual gifts. Just like you have people that win multiple gold medals in the Olympics, okay? But the idea is that the wreath will not be designated per the type of thing that you do, or you're not limited because you say, well, you know, God gave me this spiritual gift and it isn't worthy of a wreath, right? You know, and we'll get into the wreaths and you'll see that it doesn't matter which spiritual gift that you have, okay? Subpoint K. At the completion of the games, the victorious athlete was presented with his leaf, which was a pledge of great things to come. Period. You didn't go through all the training and then all of the 10 months in the gym and all that stuff just to win a perishable wreath of leaves. If that was what it was all about, you could go out in the forest and pick your own leaves and make a wreath. Okay, the idea was that the wreath was a symbol, and we talked about the wreath being a symbol, just like the crown is a symbol. The crown being the symbol of royalty and rulership, the wreath being a symbol of victory, and the symbol of victory then also has stuff that follows, and that's what we're going to next point when we get there. Okay. So far we have, at the completion of the games, the victorious athlete was presented with his wreath of leaves, which was a pledge of great things to come, period. This is analogous to the believers, paragraph SG2. Remember, that's a term that the Colonel came up with for super grace 2. It has to do with the X plus Y plus Z radical, and SG2 is going to be blessings in time. So this is analogous to the believer's paragraph SG2, which is blessing in time. And also a pledge of his tremendous eternal rewards, period. When you get rewards and you get grace in time, that's a picture of what you're also going to be getting in eternity. You're not going to get a lot of grace in time, a lot of a reward in time, and then God says, well, I gave it to you all in time. You get nothing here in eternity. The idea is that you're going to have rewards in eternity, and we're going to go through some of those. Okay, so it's blessing in time and also a pledge of his tremendous eternal rewards. Subpoint L. When the athlete arrived home, a large hole, H-O-L-E, large hole was made in the wall of his city through which he passed. Period. One of the fantastic rewards was he didn't have to come through the entrance to the city like everybody else. He got to go through the wall of the city. He got to have that mark, and we're going to see that. So he got to go. A large hole was made in the wall of the city through which he passed. Period. When he had passed through the hole, comma, it was patched up again. And the plaque was set in the wall to mark the spot. Period. How do we know this? Because archaeologically, we have proof of it. We have dug up walls that have people's names in these patched spots, and on the plaque, it tells them why it's there. You know, the individual won such and such at such and such a game. You know, it's not marked in English, obviously. It's in Latin or Greek. But the idea is, you know, these holes, these walls have been excavated, and we have seen these kinds of plaques. So when he passed through the hole, it was patched up again, and a plaque was set in the wall to mark the spot. Continue the point. On the other side of the wall, the golden chariot of the city was waiting to carry the athlete in a victory parade through all the streets of the city. So obviously, hero. Okay. In addition, he was given a free lifetime pass to all future games and a very large monetary award. Getting the point, a poet, P-O-E-T, a poet, comma, usually the leading poet of the area, comma, wrote an ode, O-D-E, to commemorate his victory and a statue was erected to him in the public square. In addition, his children were educated and fed. At public expense. And he was exempted from all income taxes for life. So that's kind of worth spending the 10 months in the gym. It's kind of similar to, you know, our Medal of Honor winners, for example. Their children are allowed to go to any of the academies without having to have a letter of recommendation from a congressman or a president. Just the fact that they're the son or daughter now, used to be just the son, but son or daughter of a Medal of Honor winner allows them to be able to go to the academy of their choice. Okay? And of course, when you go to a military academy, you don't pay. When you go to the military academy, one of the reasons people want to go to the military academy, is because when you go to the military academy, it's free. And you're not paying tens of thousands of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars to go to a private university like you do when you try to go to Harvard or Yale or something like that. Why you would ever want to go to any of those schools, I have no idea. But anyway, continue the point. This is analogous to the believer's entrance into eternity. And his real and eternal rewards at the judgment seat of Christ. Period. Remember, we had back a couple points. It was the fact that, or back point 2 actually, or D, anyway, a couple points ago, we had the fact that there were 2 types of things that the wreaths were used for. One was athletic games and the other one was the military. We obviously just finished the athletic games. We're now going to get the military ones. So we go to subpoint E. So that's all the way back out to E, okay? Capital E. So we're in point 1, capital E. The Romans used the wreath as the highest category of military decoration. In the Roman military system, period. The wreath, comma, depending on the grade awarded, comma, also carried with it various types of remuneration, period. For example, there were tax breaks, comma, land grants, comma, gladiator, for example, that individual was a Roman general. He received was land grants in Spain. He had a winery or vintner, He was a vintner. He had a vineyard. Okay, he didn't have a vintner. He had a vineyard. Okay, in Spain, right? If you ever saw the movie where his wife and daughter were killed by the new emperor. But anyway, that was a land grant. Anyway, so the wreath, depending upon the grade award, also carried various types of remuneration. For example, there were tax breaks, land grants, and cash awards. I'm going to leave it at cash. $50K to $100K in our currency, but I haven't been able to verify that. So I'm just going to leave it and say, and cash awards, period. Because you got to take into the time value of money. Even if it was 50 to 100K when we first got this doctrine 20 years ago, it would be a lot more than that now, or less, depending on the time value of money. So the idea is, I want to go ahead and I'm not including that. It's just you have to know that there were sizable cash awards. Okay. Continue the point. The Latin equivalent of the word Stephanos, of the Greek word Stephanos, is corona. And this is why we have the general translators getting things screwed up, okay? Because the Latin equivalent of the Greek word Stephanos is corona, which doesn't mean beer, where we get our English word crown. So unfortunately, the corona was what was turned into crown in English, and that's why our general translators want to use both use crown for both diadem and Stephanos, when in fact diadem is crown and Stephanos, as we saw, is wreath. In Latin, you didn't have the wreath; it was a corona, and it was a wreath, but it's now called crown in English. Continue the point. In the Roman Empire, comma, and the republic before it, comma, the corona was the term for military decoration like our medal, period. Medal, or medals, like our. Now, there was a question last week about the athletic wreaths. In the athletic wreaths, there was only one winner. You didn't have a first, second, and third. You either won or you didn't. Okay. What we're going to see here version with the military version, there are going to be various levels of military wreaths. Okay. There were not levels of military wreaths in the athlete. Okay. Subpoint 1. The Roman military man was recognized in many ways, colon. He was recognized for being a great leader, comma. Smart and effective in logistics, comma. And extremely proficient in strategy and tactics, semicolon. And there was also recognition for individual initiative and courage in battle, period. See, so this covered the whole gamut of what you were supposed to be able to do as a military individual. And you can get various wreaths for each of those. And just because you weren't a leader, a centurion in charge of 100 Roman soldiers, if you were a lonely Roman soldier, you could still get a wreath for individual initiative, just like the private can get the Medal of Honor for individual initiative, showing courage above and beyond the call of duty. You don't get a Bronze Star or Silver Star or of Honor. Okay? Continue the point. Therefore, this use of the wreath is also a fitting analogy Therefore, this use of the wreath is also a fitting analogy for the believer's eternal rewards. Period. It's a fitting analogy because you can get it for whatever, a leader or being someone with personal initiative. Okay, so the idea is that it's still an analogy. Subpoint 2. The Roman system of decorations had 6 different grades of their highest award, comma, the corona or wreath, period. Today, this would be like the United States. So today, this would be like the United States having 6 different grades of the Medal of Honor, period. But we don't. Okay, we don't have that. Okay, and so the example that's used here, we're going to see in a second, it has to do with the Germans during World War II had a high award. Okay, but it had different grades. And the idea is, well, how can it be the highest if you have different grades? Well, it's the highest category of award. There just happens to be 6 different grades beneath it. Okay, you get down to the next category of award. So it'd be similar to having 6 different ways of having a Medal of Honor before you go down to the Silver Star. Okay, we don't have that, but that's what the Romans had. They had this award, and you could look at it and go, that person has, like the Medal of Honor, you say, that person has the corona, right? And then you'd have to look closely and see which of the 6 different coronas the individual had, okay? And we're going to see that when we talk here about the German awards, okay? So point 2 altogether says the Roman system of decorations had 6 different grades of their highest award, the corona or wreath. Today, this would be like the United States having 6 different grades of a Medal of Honor. Subpoint 3. The closest thing we have to this system in modern times is the German, quote, Knight's Cross, comma, end quote, which is worn around the neck. This was originally the Prussian, comma, quote, Iron Cross, comma, end quote. Oh, there's no comma after Prussian, sorry. This was originally the Prussians, quote, Iron Cross, comma, end quote. Which was instituted in 1813, period. On September 1st, 1939, remember 39 is when Hitler invaded Poland in September. On September 1st, 1939, comma, Hitler revived the award as the Knight's Cross, which was larger and more conspicuous, period. One of the things you do when you become a dictator or a ruler like this, right, is you make all of your stuff bigger than the guy before you, okay, to show how great you are, right? There's a reason that they had all of those huge swastika flags that went stories and stories, right? You know, they would put it on top of a 10-story building and it would come down, you know, with the red flag and the circle and the swastika inside it. You've all seen those in the old World War II movies. The big point was to prove and to remind people of who was in authority, right? Well, Hitler was smart enough, being demon-possessed, Satan was smart enough, to realize that things like this are the things that cause people to be followers, that cause people to be faithful to you. You give them big rewards, you give them big crosses, you give them things to celebrate. One of the things, if you've ever watched, there was a series on, it was either Netflix or Prime Video. No, it was Hulu. Actually, it was Hulu. Talking about the Hitler boys, talking about the Hitler youth, and the fact that he did away with Boy Scouts, and it was no longer, because see, Boy Scouts was originally associated with churches, right? Well, he couldn't have that, so he took and he made Boy Scouts part of the national pride, right? And if you weren't proud to be a Hitler youth, then you were taken away and never seen again. Right, and the Hitler Youth, you got rid of the Boy Scouts, got the Hitler Youth all in the Hitler Youth organizations, and then you taught them how to be soldiers. Right, they learned how to camp, okay, and they learned how to hike, but they also learned how to shoot, how to beat each other up, and the beating each other up was to get them used to being beaten, but also to be beaters. See, many people have an aversion to hitting someone else in the head. Okay, but if you're told to do it in a camp situation and you have not just boxing but brutalizing each other, then you get over that and pretty soon you become ruthless soldiers. And those are some of the things. Well, anyway, here we have the Knight's Cross, and it's going to be larger and more conspicuous. Sorry, I got off the point. Anyway, this award eventually had 8 grades. So this award eventually had 8 grades, each a separate medal, period. So it's the same category, just different medals. The 2 lowest grades were the original Prussian Iron Cross, semicolon. Then the third was the Knight's Cross. It was just a plain cross. Semicolon. Fourth was the Knight's Cross with oak leaves. Semicolon. Now we have a kind of a similar thing in our medals. If you receive the same medal more than once, rather than having it's primarily when you're wearing it as ribbons. You know, when the guys have the things on their thing. If they've worn it more than once, they'll usually have another indicator on the ribbon that indicates it more than once, like a oak leaf, for example, or a leaf of some sort, you know, that says, okay, that person got not only the Purple Heart, he got the Purple Heart 3 times, or some silly thing like that. I shouldn't say silly, something like that, some brave thing like that. Okay. Okay, so third came the Knight's Cross. Fourth was the Knight's Cross with oak leaves. Fifth was the Knight's Cross with oak leaves and crossed swords. Sixth was the Knight's Cross with oak leaves, crossed swords, and diamonds. That was sixth, okay. Was Knight's Cross with oak leaves, crossed swords, and diamonds. Seventh was the Knight's Cross with golden oak leaves. See, the other oak leaves were bronze or copper. You know, they looked like oak leaves. Seventh was the Knight's Cross with golden oak leaves, crossed swords, and diamonds. And eighth was the even larger, quote, Grand Cross, end quote. Which was awarded only once in World War II. To Hermann Göring. For the Luftwaffes, and Luftwaffe is Luftwaffes. Okay, he was Hermann Goering was in charge of the Luftwaffe. You've probably seen pictures of him. He was a big fat guy. Okay. So it was the even larger Grand Cross, which was awarded only once in World War II to Hermann Goering for the Luftwaffe's part in the defeat of France in 1940. Period. Hermann Goering was in charge of the Luftwaffe because he had been a decorated pilot in World War I. He was flying back in World War I, the planes were wood and fabric covered, and Hermann Goering actually got shot, and they used to sing about that because he got shot and lost one of his testicles during a air fight. So anyway, so the American soldiers had a song they used to sing about him. Anyway, so it was only awarded once. Continue the point. The first fighter pilot to win the Knight's Cross with oak leaves, swords, and diamonds in World War II was Lieutenant Colonel Werner, W-E-R-N-E-R, Mulders. Period. He was the first fighter pilot to claim 100 kills just in case you're wondering, that's a 20-time ace. It only took 5 kills to be an ace, and he killed 100, okay? So he was the first fighter pilot to claim 100 kills and later became Goering's General of Fighters, period. Sure. He was the first fighter pilot to claim 100 kills and later became Goering's, or Goering's, I can't pronounce that, Goering's General of Fighters. In other words, he was the highest in the Air Force, right underneath Goering. If you recall, after World War I, Germany, one of the things Germany was not allowed to do was to have a military. They weren't allowed to have an Air Force. So what they were smart in doing, Hitler and Hindenburg right before him, but then Hitler, when he took over and got rid of Hindenburg, Hitler started a soaring school. And so he was teaching military pilots by using this quote-unquote civilian soaring school. And so we had all these people involved in sailplanes and learning how to handle planes without engines. So by the time they got engines, they were really good. and their Air Force was top-notch at the beginning of World War II. There wasn't hardly anybody except for the Polish Air Force that could fly as well as they did. And the Poles did a great job trying to keep them from overtaking Poland, but they didn't do it. They didn't win, obviously, and they ended up going to France. And then from France, they went into England. And one of the things, I have a really good book actually on the Polish Air Force. One of the things that the Poles did is they were actually the primary trainers and the primary fighter pilots in the Battle of Britain. And it was the Poles that actually, the Polish pilots, that actually kept Britain from falling in the early stages when Germany almost flat out took over the world. Okay, so that leaves us ready for war, and we're going to get back to the Roman military, and we're going to talk about their various categories of awards. I left this in. I almost took it out of the category, but I went ahead and left it in, this business about the German awards, just to give you the idea of what it is to have multiple grades of the same award. Okay, so that's where we're going to go ahead and pick it up next week, and we'll go ahead and end. If you'll stand.